Welcome back. This is Leslie Powers. I am here with part 3 of my feature presentation, Alive and Thriving, Awaken Your True Human Potential by Taking Responsibility for Your Personal Psychology, Lifestyle Choices, and Holistic Health. Claim your sovereign freedom and free your soul as you are guided by natural law and right moral action. So I'm going to start here with a recap of parts 1 and 2. In part 1, we established the qualities of chaos and oppression that we are living in within our families, in our society, and in the whole world, and how we are on a self-destructive path if we continue to follow the rules and precedents that are leading to our own destruction as a society and as a species. We identified that oppression operates both internally within us and externally outside of us in our lives. We all end up perpetuating our own enslavement to some degree by cooperating with the oppressive control system within which we live. In part 2, we defined freedom and discussed how freedom for the aggregate is integrally tied to the decisions of each individual. We recognize that expansion of our consciousness is key to improving the conditions of our world, and that we must halt the destructive patterns which we are perpetuating. We each have both power and responsibility. I emphasize that the continuation of current conditions is detrimental to all people, and especially to the lives of our children and the overall trajectory of freedom for the future of humanity. This heightens our call to action. I invited you to start imagining a better world, a world based on freedom for all people. I know that in some ways this is hard to imagine a world without government, a world without oppressive rule makers and accountability systems based on coercion and threat. But yet it's essential that we start to create a new vision, of how your personal actions can also contribute to this better world, that we all have a potential, a power, and a responsibility to make an impact in the world that can have rippling effects on future generations. And I believe strongly that every one of us alive today has this responsibility to wake up and see what's going on, to say no to oppression and corruption, and to teach about true morality, and to share the vision of how we can have a better life, how humanity can be free and live in cooperative harmony. I asked you to reflect on your current life choices and decide how much you might want to adjust your habits, thoughts, and priorities to match this vision. The pain of our lives and the loss of our freedom is perpetuated through a false belief in authority. Authority is defined as the power to give orders, to make decisions for other people, and enforce obedience. It's a person or organization who claim to have power or control in a particular sphere. Authority takes away the option of voluntary cooperation or the option to say no without punishment. So this actually involves coercion, which is defined as the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. Compulsion. And I'm kind of laughing here as I read that they're using force and threats to persuade people. Persuading does not truly happen by force, okay? If it's using forces against someone to do something against their will, that is coercion, that is violence. As we go forward, we will talk more and more about how these concepts of authority and coercion violate our rights as humans, and is the core of what's creating the chaos and the pain and the disruption that's rampant throughout our world. So let's move forward with part 3. To part 3, where we're going to talk about rights, natural law, truth, the truth-seeking method, otherwise called the trivium. and emotional intelligence. What is awakening? Mark Passio, quote, says, being awake means caring enough to take action to create positive change. It is not about remaining passive and accepting everything as it is. Mark also has identified 20 factors of true awakening, and I'll be sharing just 7 of them here for your awareness. Number 1, knowing about the occult or hidden truths and understanding that there are both light and dark aspects to this. Number 2, knowing that truth is singular, objective, and exists independently of our perceptions of it. 3, knowing the true self and understanding its connection to all. Number 4, knowing that neither the physical nor spiritual realities take precedence over each other. 5, being out of ego identification and ego attachment. 6, exercising discernment and judgment. 7, being mentally free of all false religions, beliefs, and values. So Mark Passio has been a big influence on my growth and awakening, and I refer you to his website, What on Earth is Happening. Encourage you to start with this podcast series starting at number 1. He outlines a wonderful tapestry of information that really helps you to understand what's really going on in the world, and to be able to see things as they are and be hopefully inspired to take action. Also, there's a distinction here between the true self and the false self. And we are seeking to find our true selves so that we may fully become ourselves and develop into our true potential as humans in this world together. In the true self, one's worldview reflects the understanding that there is no real separation between self and others. One does not exist in a mental schism or ego identification. One seeks to break down institutionalized belief systems that hold back the progress of consciousness. And one is concerned with the alleviation of suffering for all beings. We touched on this a bit in part 1 and 2, where we identified that a lot of our conditioning has led us to follow rules that aren't based in truth or reality or even in our best interests, and that we need to look at whose rules are we following and how did they get developed in our psyche. To reflect and understand where our worldviews have come from is essential, and to seek this embodiment of the true self as we move forward. We need conscious attention and intentional behaviors to free ourselves and to protect our freedom. Higher self, that of love. In spiritual truth, everything is light and we are all one soul, one in the same, one with God's infinite wisdom, one with nature, one with all that is. We are without separation, and that puts us into our higher self. Your higher self is pure love, love of oneness and humanity. Conscious as an adjective, aware of and responding to one's surroundings, awake. Synonyms: alert, responsive, sentient, aware. Conscious, having knowledge of something. Mindful, sensible, aware. We are conscious of the extent of the problem. We are not in denial. Conscious, painfully aware of, sensitive to. Consciousness means that we see what is, we see the truth, no matter how painful. So these are action items for freedom. Again, a slide from Mark Passio, where he talks about the grassroots solutions for real and positive change. And he outlines these strategies in great detail in his podcast, but I'll summarize them or list them. Heal your worldview. Change the quality of your attention. Develop true present moment awareness. Change your diet to be plant-based, organic. Detach from the monetary system. Non-support of dominators, meaning rule followers, government officials, police, military, government institutions that are dominating our world. Develop mindfulness. The use of entheogens in conscious context as a means to awaken one's mind. The use of positive thinking, and finally, help awaken others. Additionally, we need to recognize and activate the power of self-respect and saying no to those people and systems that are violating our rights and stealing our freedoms. As Peggy Hall, a freedom activist, said, complying only makes you more of a target. So here are some quotes by David Icke. Self-respect has broken every tyranny in history. Without self-respect, all that is left is submission. The prescription is mass non-cooperation with our own enslavement. We will not acquiesce to psychopathic evil. We need the courage and indestructible determination to say no. No is the lost word. From Mark Passio. In the enlightened state of consciousness generated through the knowledge of natural law, a human being is finally able to speak the lost word, which is no. No is the word of all power. Only when we say no to those who would claim to be our owners, those who claim that it is they who will decide which rights we have or do not have, do we stop externalizing our power to anyone outside of ourselves, and in doing so, reclaim all of our rights. Sadly, very, very few people in our world have the knowledge, care, and courage that is required to do this. This is why this all-powerful word is considered lost. This presentation and this series and my website, AliveThrive.life, is all about reclaiming our rights and our power, our true human power to say yes or no to those things that we choose in full understanding of natural law and considering consequences. And when working with knowledge and care and courage, we can make good choices that benefit all of us in society. So take a moment here and think about all your relationships. Examine your relationships from the lens of power and control, or freedom and oppression. Examine your level of honesty in each. How honest can you be in each of your relationships? What are you repressing to make the relationship, quote unquote, work, to keep the peace? How reciprocal is the energy exchange in your dynamic? Where is your locus of control in each dynamic? Do you claim your own sense of self-efficacy, your sense of internal power and control in the relationship? Do you feel safe to speak up? How healthy are each of you in your functioning? How free and sovereign do you feel within each relationship of your life? So these relationships to examine would be, with a romantic partner, with friends, with your parents, with your children, workmates, your employer, with various government agencies that you come into contact with educational systems, religious institutions, political organizations, and within yourself. Take a few minutes and reflect on each relationship and your level of authenticity and honesty and sense of empowerment within each. Are you feeling oppressed or succumbing to threat or coercion within any of those relationships? We need to know our human rights. Our rights are intrinsic. They are not given to us by another human being or a government or a piece of paper. Rights are inherent. Rights are actions that do not cause other beings harm. If an action causes harm to another, that is a wrongdoing. Human rights are inherent within natural law. Human rights are not given to us by other humans. Essentially, you have the right to have control over your own property, which includes your body and what happens to it. You have the right to be left alone and to have your personal space and belongings left in peace. You have the right to true and accurate information and the freedom to access information sources of your choice. There are transgressions against your natural law rights, and this includes murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, or willful lying. You don't have a right to commit these wrongs against other people, nor do other people have the right to transgress your natural law rights. So no one has the right, obviously, to murder you or assault you or rape you or steal from you or trespass on your property or coerce and force you to do things or lie and withhold information intentionally and willfully from you. Think about how you may have your rights transgressed upon. Those would be toxic, unhealthy relationships. Again, knowing rights. Rights are most easily understood when they are considered through the apophatic inquiry. This process helps us to understand what a right actually is by understanding which actions are not rights because they cause harm to others. So we cannot commit murder, assault, rape, steal, trespass, coerce, or lie, and do so rightfully. Those are wrongdoings. But anything else is a right. Natural law always holds true regardless of a population's belief system. This means that it does not matter how many people agree that a wrong can be turned into a right or that a right can be turned into a wrong. Such things can never be done in reality. People can only believe that they can claim such reversals and that this will magically make it so. Unfortunately, most human beings erroneously believe that it is morally possible for them to create and delegate rights which do not exist or to take away rights which do exist. No one has a right to take away your natural rights. A right is correct. It's based in truth. A right is moral, which means it is based in natural law. Rights are actions. Actions based in right do not result in harm to other sentient beings. So what is wrong? Wrong means incorrect and not based in truth. Wrong means immoral, not based in natural law. Actions based in wrong result in harm to other sentient beings. How are you being harmed? Through acts of coercion, trespass, willful lying. Who's committing those wrongs against you? So to summarize, what is a right? You have the right to do anything so long as it does no harm to another sentient being. Stand up for your rights. I think we've forgotten this element of activism as our societies become more complacent and passive. So I'm calling on you to stand up for your rights. And I want you to ask yourself, what do you say yes to? And perhaps more importantly, what do you say no to? What we say yes and no to, when aligned in mind, body, and spirit, defines our personal integrity and guides our life experiences. Our boundaries, or our no's, very, very clearly define our experience in our life. We are also subject to the behaviors of the aggregate. The thoughts, feelings, and actions of the majority largely creates our living reality and the environment or fish tank that we swim in. So we have ability to say yes and no to many things. However, because of the yeses and nos of the aggregate of humanity, we run into some very harsh consequences in some areas of life because the majority is accepting wrongdoings and not saying no to violation of their rights. So those of us who really are committed to saying yes to what's right and no to what's wrong can end up with very harsh experiences when we say no to a wrong if the wrong is being advocated and allowed and supported by the majority. So we can't act alone here to change things. We need to work together from the foundation of really understanding our rights and having the courage to say no when those rights are being violated. So that brings us to what is natural law. Natural law is what creates essentially cosmic justice. Natural means inherent, having a basis in nature, reality, and truth. It's not made or caused by humankind. Law, an existing condition which is binding and immutable, which means it cannot be changed. A true law is immutable and timeless. It's binding. Natural law is a science of objective morality that can be directly observed in the 3D world. The evidence of the existence of natural law is the resultant state which humanity receives as a direct consequence of its aggregate behavior, or in other words, the human condition itself. One can observe, discover, understand, and act in accordance with the principles of natural law to make change in oneself and our physical reality, for we are co-creators and your actions do matter. Referencing natural law principles can help us sort out the truth and guide our behavior when we are getting bogged down in the confusion of dealing with complex life situations or people who are emotionally draining or behaviorally challenging to us. Natural law is a guide. Natural law transgressions or violations are wrongdoings. A living being or their property must have been harmed in order for a violation of natural law or a wrongdoing to have taken place. Any action which does not cause harm is a right. So this brings us sometimes in conflict with man-made laws, which are often not immutable. They're subjective. They can change from county to county or state to state. So natural law, aka God's law, cosmic law, can be seen sometimes in other concepts, such as the law of cause and effect. Effect invariably follows cause. For every action, there exists an equal and opposite reaction. Or the law of attraction. The energy you emit is the energy you attract. Energy flows where attention goes. As you think, feel, and act, so you shall be. Thought plus feeling plus action equals manifested reality. Karma or moral law. What goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. and the golden rule: do unto others as you would have done to yourself, treat others as you want to be treated, and the concept of reciprocity. These are esoteric principles aligning with natural law. So natural law exists whether we think it does or not. And there are always consequences to our actions based on this immutable law. Now, we can be in alignment in a positive sense, or we can be in opposition. And these graphs identify what happens when you're aligned in a positive sense or in a negative sense. So first, let's compare natural law with man's law. Natural law is based upon principles and truth inherent to creation and not man-made. Man's law is based on dogmatic beliefs or constructs of the mind. Natural law is harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding. Man's law is complied with due to fear of punishment. Natural law is universal. It exists and applies anywhere in the universe, regardless of location. Man's law differs with location based upon the whim of legislators. Man's law is an example of moral relativism. Natural law is eternal and immutable. It exists and applies for as long as the universe exists and cannot be changed. Man's law changes with time based upon the whim of legislators and rule makers. Again, moral relativism. So let's look at the natural law expressions based on some different conditions. So the first category or expression of natural law is generative polarity, what we use to create. If we're in positive alignment with natural law, meaning that we are not hurting anyone, then our outcome is love and consciousness. If we violate natural law through causing harm to others, the outcome is the polarity of fear and unconsciousness. What is the initiating expression of our choices? How does it start? If it starts with knowledge and acceptance of truth, we have a positive outcome. If we are starting out in ignorance and refusing to see truth, then we have a negative outcome of harm. What happens inside us? What is the internal expression? If we're aligned in a positive sense with natural law and we're not hurting others, we have sovereignty and what's called internal monarchy, where we are in charge of ourselves from the inside based on principle and morality. So if we are operating out of alignment with natural law and in a negative sense, then we have confusion, internal anarchy. We're violating ourselves. So then what happens in society? What is the external expression of what happens? When we're positively aligned with natural law, we have freedom or external anarchy. If we do not align with the positive aspects and we are involved in causing harm, then the result in our society is control and external monarchy. If we don't say no to people who are attempting to violate the natural law and have control or power over us, we are then allowing that control and external monarchy to happen. And so then there's a manifestation based on our actions, a manifestation based on whether we are aligned with natural law in the positive sense or whether we are in opposition. The result we create can be order or manifested good if we are aligned with the positive expression of natural law. If not, though, then the result is manifested evil or chaos. So these are very important concepts to think about in this very logical way, understanding cause and effect, and knowing that we can't get around nature, even though there are people who are trying, but the consequences exist. And they are being expressed in our society through our compliance with those who are violating natural law. And if we're not careful, we take on mindsets, worldviews, and behaviors that continue this violation of natural law that lead to the negative expression and negative outcomes. There are 7 cosmic principles, otherwise known as the Hermetic laws, the Hermetic principles, that explain the fundamental natural law system of the universe. And by studying these principles, we can gain a lot of internal monarchy, internal power and freedom and sovereignty, and live in harmony with each other and with nature itself, with the universe. So, number 1 is the law of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Mentalism is the starting point. Number 2, correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. As within, so without. As without, so within. The micro and the macro, if we look closely, we see correspondences all throughout nature. Number 3, vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves, everything vibrates. And each frequency of vibration, each speed of vibration has a different element. It has a different energy to it, which can be correlated to emotion and lightness or heaviness. Then there's the law of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So understanding the dance of polarity and how it's used against us or to coerce or influence us is really important, and how we can then master this particular principle to gain control in our own lives and effectiveness in our life choices. So the 5th Hermetic principle is rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the left is the measure of the swing to the right. Rhythm compensates. Think about the areas that we experience rhythm and polarity, right, together, because these principles interact with each other. You could think of the political system of Republican and Democrat, and these swings back and forth, right? And then there's cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And finally, the 7th Hermetic principle is gender or generation. Gender is everything, and within everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Understanding gender helps us understand how generation happens, how creation happens through this reality of masculine and feminine principles. So once we understand those Hermetic principles, we can understand a lot more about how the world works and how reality is formed. And we start to see that truth is not relative, but perspective is. Truth is objective, meaning that it is not based on the perceptions of human beings, which are capable of wavering and have incomplete knowledge most of the time. Truth is simply that which is. It is that which has occurred in the past and that which is occurring in the present. It is that which actually, exists within the universe and nature. A quote by Ernest Holmes from The Science of Mind, his definition of truth: that which is. It is the reason, cause, and power in and through everything. It is birthless, deathless, changeless, complete, perfect, whole, self-existent, causeless, almighty, God, spirit, law, mind, intelligence, and anything and everything that implies reality. We don't determine the truth. We can discover truth and we can seek truth. And being a truth seeker is powerful and important to our mission here of gaining freedom and psychological health and happiness in order to thrive. So continuing the definition of truth from The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. By a process of axiomatic reasoning, we arrive at the conclusion that spirit knows nothing outside itself. The truth is that which is, and being that which is, it must be infinite and all. Being infinite or all, the truth can have nothing outside itself, other than itself, or unlike itself, by which to divide itself. Consequently, the spirit is indivisible, changeless, and complete within itself. Itself is all that is, both cause and effect, the alpha and the omega. So this element of truth we see is something beyond us, that is a spiritual principle. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Not the truth. Big or small, lies are lies. And often we lie to ourselves and to others through these two paradigms. Solipsism, the theory that the self is the only thing that can be known and verified. The view that the self is the only reality. The belief or proposition that the person entering it alone exists, and that other people exist only as ideas in his mind. The philosophic idea that only one's mind is sure to exist. And this, of course, would lead to moral relativism, which is the ideology that objective morality does not exist inherently to nature, and that right and wrong are subjective constructs which human beings may invent and arbitrate according to time, location, circumstance, or preference. In truth and reality, morality is objective. Rights can never become wrongs, and wrongs can never become rights at any place or time, regardless of how many people believe or wish it to be so. So moral relativism is a false ideology, but unfortunately, it is becoming rampant in our world. And if you want to find out why, ask who's benefiting from this? Who's gaining money and power over telling you that morality is relative? Moral relativism. We're going to look more at these concepts of truth, perception, opinion, worldview, belief. Quote unquote, my truth has become a popular slogan to basically shut down another person's logical argument. This leads to confusion about right and wrong. Often my truth really means my perception or my belief, neither of which is guaranteed to be true. Be clear that our perceptions do not always tell us the truth. Sometimes we lie to ourselves as well as others. Your perception of truth may be biased due to faulty childhood scripts or worldviews imposed upon you. These are unconscious drivers. It is important to develop discernment abilities. It is important to do your inner work to sort out what is driving you and your perceptions, and to use a holistic process of information gathering along with a solid understanding of moral principles in order to avoid being hijacked and hacked by manipulative agendas and lies. Good outcomes require good information and solid tools. A quote by Brian Herbert: "The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice." To create the life we really want, we need good information. This includes self-knowledge. We need to know ourselves inside and out and to have a solid understanding of how the laws of nature and manifestation operate. We get good information through critical thinking, through a critical thinking process. This can be achieved through the trivium and quadrivium. We also need to know what the pitfalls are, such as thinking errors and how mind control works in our society. We need to access our intuition, internal knowing, visions, proper use of feelings and senses, energetic states, and psychic abilities. These skills assist us in developing discernment and are available to all of us. They can be used in combination for decision making and truth finding. We need to really understand how we've been tricked and to be able to catch the lies. So, learning how to think is more important than the facts you memorize. A quote by Albert Einstein says, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school." So now we want to learn how to think. We really haven't been taught how to think, at least most of us haven't. So we need to learn how to think. And there are two methodologies of truth discovery which enable an individual to learn how to think. And these are called the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium is the overarching method of truth discovery. It includes the three arts of language pertaining to the mind: logic, the art of thinking; grammar, the art of inventing and combining symbols and putting together comprehensive understanding of the information that we have inputted. So then it's processing information. And then third is rhetoric, which is the art of communication or sharing. And the quadrivium involves four arts that allow us to analyze data and do so in a logical and wise way. The four arts of quantity pertaining to matter. And this includes arithmetic, or the theory of numbers; music, the application of the theory of numbers; and then geometry, this theory of space; and astronomy, the application of the theory of space. Notice that these arts give one a very broad perspective of it. You know, when you take the data and then you put it through arithmetic, or you translate it into music, or you see it through geometry or astronomy, you're looking at it through large patterns. You're seeing correspondences. These tools help individuals remove their erroneous belief systems and magical thinking and come to accurate conclusions about what is true and what is not true, including the truth about natural laws that govern human behavior. Both are, not at all surprisingly, completely absent from most modern educational systems. You know, math is taught, but it's certainly not taught in the context of how it's important or how it can be used for individual critical thinking. So again, the trivium can be described as input, processing, and output, or grammar, logic, and rhetoric, or knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. With input, we gather data from an eclectic array of sources without prejudging it, putting aside our biases. The input stage answers the questions, or explores the questions: who, what, when, and where. This is the raw data. Then comes processing, logic, or understanding. This is comprised of three basic substeps: filtration, filtering information; correlation, drawing the correlations and similarities and patterns, and analysis. And this is where the quadrivium can be used through analysis, through statistics, through mathematical comparisons, etc. And then output, rhetoric or wisdom, involves speech and action based upon the knowledge that one has gathered and understands. So it's not enough just to hold on to knowledge or understanding. There is a certain, I think, ethical obligation to share it, to share the information and communicate it and teach it and offer it to others. This is how knowledge and understanding are propagated so that real and positive change can be created. So be intentional about gathering information from a variety of sources. This is the input. Then thoughtfully filter through that data, which is processing, before coming to a conclusion. Then finally act on it in the world, which is output. The quadrivium, again, involves arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And I do believe that that is the recommended order of studying these four arts, the arts and sciences. And philosophy could be seen as a synthesis of all four of these. The subjects which hone the thinking skills for effective information processing. So in the field of psychology and mental health counseling, we recognize that there are a lot of cognitive distortions that people use that get in the way of proper processing and sometimes even prohibit the information gathering stage. We could also call these thinking errors. They are automatic thoughts which are faulty in their logic and get in our way. So it's really important that we develop the willingness to reflect on ourselves and on our own thinking and evaluate the validity of our own thought process, and to keep your eye out for these common cognitive distortions or thinking errors that really can lead us to false conclusions. So some examples are all or nothing thinking, sometimes called black and white thinking, making statements, either, such as, I made a mistake and therefore I've ruined everything. It's all or nothing. Either you do it my way or we don't interact, right? Very extreme. Overgeneralizing, similarly, seeing a pattern based upon a single event, or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw. So it's not valid to see something happen once or twice and say that conclusively that's always how it is, for example. Mental filtering, only paying attention to certain types of evidence and just blocking out the others. Noticing our failures, but not seeing our successes, for example, or seeing the faults that, someone in your household and not seeing that in context of all the good things they do. Disqualifying the positive, where we just discount the good things that have happened or that you have done, and just say it doesn't count. That was easy for me. It doesn't count. I'm not going to take credit for that. Jumping to conclusions. There are two types of jumping to conclusions. One involves mind reading or imagining that we know what others are thinking, and fortune telling, which would be predicting the future. And while we can, develop some skills through our observation that we could predict some things, we really don't know. So we need to be cautious about just claiming that we know what's going to happen, what someone's thinking, what they're going to do. And related to this are the thinking errors of magnification and minimization. So magnification could be also called catastrophizing. This is blowing things out of proportion, making a mountain out of a molehill. So catastrophizing, like something terrible is going to happen because they didn't wash the dishes, Minimization is inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important. Very common in addictions, where the negative consequences of, let's say, an addiction are being minimized or denied, right? And made to say that they're not a big deal. when they are, in fact, or they're building up to accumulate to a big deal. So now we have emotional reasoning, and I see this a lot. And this is assuming that because we feel a certain way, that we think that must be true. I feel embarrassed, so I must be an idiot. I am angry, and therefore I justify lashing out and saying these, cruel things to someone. When we are in a strong state of emotion, we can convince ourselves that things are a certain way, and then act on that. When you're highly emotional is probably the worst time to really take action and draw a conclusion, because usually it's distorted. And then we have these words such as should and must, which are tricky words. And those using words like should, must, ought can make us feel guilty or like we've already failed. And that can be a manipulation of our own self and others. If we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. Trying to change other people, or using words as should or must on ourselves can backfire. It often, I think, because it's very, again, like all or nothing, black or white, that there's room for error in the use of those words, and that it can really trigger that part of us that has this rebelliousness to it. Like, I should do that, therefore I'm really not going to do that unless I want to do that, right? It can create just unnecessary internal struggle that's a waste of energy. Then we have labeling, calling people stupid, just a loser, telling people they're useless. It often is unhelpful. Assigning labels to ourselves or other people shuts people down typically, and pushes them out of the conversation. Occasionally it can be used to shake somebody up enough for them to do something to change, but oftentimes it just is like, people are gonna push away and disengage. Personalization. This is my fault. Everything is my fault. I did it wrong. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, right? Too much. Blaming yourself or taking responsibility for something that isn't really your fault isn't helpful. Obviously, we want all of us to be responsible for ourselves, to take responsibility for our actions. And we certainly don't want to be blaming other people for something that's not your fault, and personalizing yourself as a victim or anything like that. We want to take responsibility, and yet we don't want to take people off the hook for taking theirs. So what happens sometimes in these kind of dysfunctional relationships is one person becomes a scapegoat and takes all the fault and allows, themselves to be dumped on by others, and that's not helpful. We need to have good boundaries and know where we end and where another person begins, and where the responsibilities become shared, for example. So I'll just share a few others here. I do think it's very helpful to look and think about these errors and examine in your own life which ones you tend to use the most, catch them. So here's one called selective abstraction, drawing conclusions on the basis of just one of many elements in a situation. So again, this is drawing a false conclusion based on limited data. And arbitrary inference, drawing conclusions when there is little or no evidence. So again, in the trivium process, we're gathering data, and we need to gather this data from eclectic sources and have enough data to draw a conclusion, and also sometimes recognize when we don't have enough, or be open also to added information as our ability to, to understand the world and increase in consciousness expands. All right. So continuing with some thinking errors and fallacies. Again, a logical fallacy, errors in reasoning that invalidate the argument. So here's an example. Penguins are black and white. Some old TV shows are black and white. Therefore, some penguins are old TV shows. Faulty logic. And so this can lead to, when we are engaging in faulty thinking and logical fallacies, it can lead to dirty fighting and a lot of confusion, an unnecessary distraction in debate, where in fact people really aren't debating from a place of reason and logic, but in fact are throwing out attacks and distractions. So we want to keep our eyes out for this type of fallacies of logic. A fallacy is any defect in reasoning which destroys an argument's validity. So we talked about some of those common thinking errors. And then let's add these. When people are talking about an event and then they start to attack the person, this is called ad hominem, the Latin term meaning against the man. It is discrediting an opponent instead of his or her argument. For example, you're a liberal, you can't be correct. If you're a liberal, I don't want to talk to you, right? It's just like, or you, I don't like you. So therefore, I'm not going to listen to a word you say. Or you did XYZ bad thing. So therefore, nothing you say has any merit. It's attacking the person instead of logically analyzing the information. Then there's a faulty cause and effect, the belief that if event B occurs just after event A, then A causes B. So correlation does not prove causality. For example, when I wash my car, it rains the next day, therefore washing my car alters weather patterns, right? That's faulty logic. Either or, suggesting that there are only two possibilities for a given situation rather than more. For example, either you accept naturalism or you are superstitious. This is where polarities are used against us. We get played with this whole idea that it's either or, Democrat, Republican, vote or don't vote, right? There's only two options. Watch out for that. And then there's guilt by association, attempting to discredit an idea, person, or belief by associating it with an undesirable person or group. For example, I can't believe you're a Christian, Hitler was a Christian, or oh my God, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? Using labels, names, associating, if I say that I like listening to David Wolf's material and somebody doesn't like David Wolf and they see me as then, a crazy, conspiracy, extremist, because I associate with someone they perceive as negative, right? That's faulty logic. Loaded questions. A loaded question is a question phrased so that it forces an answer based on a false or controversial premise. For example, why are women such bitches? It's so funny. Sorry. So it's like when you're already leading someone with a loaded statement, and that's not good debate. That's not a logical truth-seeking methodology. So I'm bringing this up because it's really an important foundation that you understand, one, what are your rights, where they come from, what is natural law, how does it work, how are we interacting with nature in such a way that we can create outcomes for our lives, both good or bad. How are we being duped and tricked and distracted, by the way that our culture has unfolded and the powers that are, making efforts to control us and use the fruits of our labor for something other than our own enlightenment or our own actualization as humans. So finally, in this part 3, I'm going to share this concept of emotional literacy, because not only do we need to be able to think and think critically, we must learn to regulate our emotions. If we don't have emotional intelligence and we're not able to manage our emotions and understand the emotions of others, then our knowledge has limited power and it can be lost in the distraction of emotional lability, right? So what is emotional intelligence? It involves these skills: self-awareness, empathy, motivation, self-regulation, and social skills. One needs to know their feelings, have a sense of empathy and connection to others, and understand how we're connected. One must learn to manage your emotions when you're triggered, to repair emotional problems. So there's skills involved in getting along with other people and solving problems and resolving conflicts. And then we could put these skills together and call it emotional interactivity, which is the ability to be aware and read other people's feelings, which enables one to interact with them effectively so that powerful emotional situations can be handled in a skillful way. What I'm noticing among some really well-intended and intelligent intellectual people who are trying to do the right thing is they are getting stuck in areas of the relationships where unhealed wounds and traumas from their past have left them somewhat emotionally stuck, where they're lacking some of this emotional literacy and freeze or flee or fight with the people that they love, and that they're trying to create a new life together with, and it's going badly, and even in the community of people who are all trying to educate and teach and inspire the world in positive ways. Oftentimes we get distracted with conflicts among ourselves and where we're not working together in the best ways. So here we are, really trying to become whole people, holistic people, through not only honing our intellectual skills to study and gain knowledge and build confidence in ourselves as thinkers, but also to be at home in our own emotional body, to have emotional intelligence, to feel okay with our range of emotions, to be able to accept others' emotions and to interact in harmonious ways through these skills of emotional interactivity and conflict resolution. So this is the end of part 3, where we've talked about what does it mean to be enlightened? What are our rights? What is natural law? How do we think? And what are the skills to help us to, most effectively receive and process information and come to conclusions, and then also be thinking about how are we then going to take this knowledge that we've learned to help others, to share and educate and to put it out into the world. So I leave this presentation with this question about what do you want to do? What do you have in mind about how you want to share the knowledge that you've gained for the good of all people? Looking forward to seeing you in part 4 of Alive and Thriving. My website is alivethrive.life. You can also find me at the One Great Work Network, and I am available for coaching, life integration coaching, and empowerment and holistic wellness coaching. Have a great day. Thank you.